Hello, everyone, and welcome to a very special edition of Comics from the Future. Happy holidays and Merry Christmas to everybody. Here we are on Christmas Eve, still at the shop. We're still here to bring you comics.
We promised you we'd be here, and here we are.
Yes, we are here. We're doing a half day, and of course, we got to do the show. So it's a very light week for comics this week. There are no Marvel comics to order. There are no DC comics to order. There are no Image comics to order. There's just like maybe 5 or 6 we're going to go over.
Yep.
So what we did instead is we have a year in review that we're going to do. We're going to go over sort of our favorite comics of the year and others that are just major noteworthy things. So stick around for that. We're just going to get through the very few comics to order, and then we're going to get to the main part of the show, our comics in review. Thank you all for joining us on this fine Christmas Eve. I hope you're somewhere warm and happy, drinking some cocoa or eggnog or something festive. So I guess let's begin. Let's get this part of the show done. So we're going to go to our featured comics, which is definitely the fewest of the year.
Yes. Starting off with Cover of Darkness. This is a new book from Source Point. I love this cover. Like, I'm a big fan of anything with not universal monsters, but you know, those type things, mummies, werewolves, vampires, all that.
I think of those as universal monsters.
I mean, universally loved, but also in the canon of the Universal Studios monsters. Yeah, so this is about, it says 5 heroes who are trying to get back to each other, but along the way they face some horrible, scary monsters like you see on the cover. And I had to look all the way to issue 2 solicitation to be like, but what is it about? And it still doesn't give away too much, but it does promise in issue 2 there is going to be a gorilla fighting a werewolf. So if that's not a high selling point for any book, I don't know what is. So it sounds interesting. Not a whole lot of information about the actual, like, who are the heroes, why are they needing to get back together, but just the monsters has me intrigued. So this is our A cover for it. And then we have a McDaniel variant with a Nosferatu right there in the background.
Okay, so just to show how short this part of the show is going to be, we only have one more #1 to go over, and here it is. It is called The Ghoul Agency. This is from Action Lab. Action Lab likes to do their comics where they have a bit of humor to them. That is almost a constant theme with them, often some sick humor. So The Ghoul Agency follows a character named Shay who works for a very unique advertising agency. Their clients range from mad scientists to creatures of the night. Now, I can see why a mad scientist might need an ad agency, depending, you know, they want to do their experiments. They want, you know, people to sign up, to have their brains removed and swap. A creature of the night, I'm not sure. We'll have to see why that is. But anyway, Shay works for this agency, and she's trying to land this really big account, but her boss is a demon. And I know we say that about our bosses all the time, but this boss is a literal demon, and the boss is sort of messing things up. I don't know how, but I mean, you can imagine a demon would mess lots of things up. So that is sort of the premise for Ghoul Agency. I think the people who are going to want this comic know it, and everybody else, you know, now know more about it. But that's it. Those are the only 2 featured #1s
Isn't
of today.
It funny, on Christmas Eve, the featured ones are both like monster related books.
Maybe it's supposed to have been out for Halloween, got pushed back. So now we're going to quickly go over cool covers and other comics, of which there's hardly any of at all this week as well. But stay tuned, because really we put a lot of work into the next part of the show after this, which is our year in review. That's what I'm looking forward to.
So, next up is issue number 3 of The Heathens. I really liked this series so far. And in this one, you know, it's the villains, the evil people from hell hunting down the even more evil people who escaped hell. But that still doesn't defeat the fact that the heathens are still bad people. And now that they're back out on the surface, they should be hunting this Jack the Ripper and everything, but they maybe start to get up to some of their old ways and need to be course corrected. So really cool series so far, and I'm looking forward to seeing how this one continues with this cool plot. So yep, and I think just the one cover for
Just
this
the
one.
one cover. So also from Aftershock is My Date with Monsters #3. You know, we like to tell you guys about #2s and 3s so that people can sign up on series, because otherwise us retailers, we may not order enough for the wall. You might miss out. So in this, all of the horror creatures of the nightmare world are creeping closer and closer to our real world.
Mm.
This issue promises that people are going to die. It's going to be bad. But it also says that at least there's a cute dog involved. So I don't know how that's going to play out. But if you like the previous issue of My Date with Monsters, you may want to sign up for that. And then we also next have...
Hecate's Will. Is that how I heard it said?
That is, Andy just looked
I
up
just looked it
how to
up because
pronounce
I'm
that.
tired of mispronouncing that. Hecate's Will is this. She's a kind of a graffiti tagger or whatever. But in this issue #2, as she's going around tagging different parts of the city, she doesn't realize that she's kind of building up a fan base who's following her around. It's a little Banksy action going on.
Okay.
So we've still got some issue #1s on our wall. If you haven't checked it out, check it out. It sounds like a really cool story. And this is the #2.
All right, so also available for order from Behemoth Comics is Night JANEK #2. This is a 3-issue series. In this issue, Night JANEK has to go up against a giant centipede kaiju. And to do that, Night JANEK is going to have to build a team. That's always one of my favorite things in any work of fiction, is building the right team.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what's going on in Night JANEK #2. And there's a variant by the same cover artist, but just this is the B cover variant.
It's a really cool centipede monster.
Mm-hmm. And that is it for the comics to order this week. There are some other ones. It's just they're so far in, we didn't think it was worth bringing up every last little one. So instead, what we're going to do next is we're going to do our year in review. So this took us a while. We had to think all the way back to the beginning of 2021.
I'm sure we're still missing something that we were super excited about.
Don't get mad if we're missing one of your favorites or
Mhm.
something. That's what the comments are for. You know, bring it up in the comments. But I mean, when you think back to early 2021, it's like, you know, Future State,
Yeah.
King in Black. I mean, stuff where it was awesome, but it's like, oh, was that this year?
Yeah.
Or so let's go through it. So we put a lot of this together. I hope you enjoyed. We're starting with Marvel, by the way.
Yeah. So this is comics from the past. This just ended recently, but War of the Bounty Hunters and all the Star Wars books this year, I feel like, really have continued to build hype and everything. We're getting ready in less than a week for Book of Boba Fett to hit Disney Plus. So the synergy between the comics and the shows and everything has been at an all-time high. But also this year, we've got the High Republic that really kicked into gear. Some of the stuff that we're going to be talking about maybe didn't start this year. There was a little bit of it in the previous year. But for this, I mean, you know, Star Wars comics have been going for a while, but the High Republic stuff has been awesome. A whole new entry point to the Star Wars universe. We know that there's a lot coming in the pipeline. We're just at the beginning of the High Republic hype and story. We've got the game coming up. We've got Star Wars Acolyte that I'm sure we're going to hear more about this next year. But I have thoroughly enjoyed all the Star Wars books this year. Darth Vader, Star Wars, Dr. Aphra. So if you missed any of those, that is a great one to go back and pick up. I could recommend any of the Star Wars stuff. It's all been great.
Yeah, I agree. And them putting Charles Soule sort of in control of it, he was the right choice, because his run on Vader, that's Vader Volume 2 Marvel, is still my favorite Star Wars thing I've ever read, actually. I highly recommend you guys pick that up in whatever form you can. So continue on with Marvel. Who can forget King in Black? This was probably the most popular Marvel event I've seen since my store has been open, which has been 7 years. I really don't know what prior event was more popular than this one. And, you know, Donny Cates, hats off to him. He had a great year this year. I mean, his run of Venom, incredible, leading up and into it. Of course, that started the previous year. but it just kept building steam. I mean, the whole Marvel universe was paused to have this event,
Yeah.
and we had so many people reading it. Now, I know I don't think everybody feels like the landing was pulled off perfect, but how do you do that? I think some people were hoping that Null was going to stick around and
Yeah.
there were going to be repercussions for years to come. If Marvel was ever going to do that, I think they would have done that on this book, but I just think it wasn't in the cards. I don't think it's up to Cates to. I think he had parameters he had to end it within.
Yeah.
And so within those parameters, he did a great job. It was a wild ride, a lot of good one-shots. It just touched on so many good books. And I think it's one that's going to be looked back on very, very fondly.
Yeah.
I think it's just going to take a breath
well,
to get away from it.
Characters like Null and everything, I mean, it's not like when Thanos first appeared or we had Infinity Gauntlet or whatever. It's not like, well, he's done. We beat him and put him to the side. I feel like Null is a character, give a few years, and he's going to have a return in some form. Because, I mean, Donny Cates created a compelling, lasting character that people still want more of, and Marvel loves that.
With godlike powers, Cates actually changed a lot of things in Marvel as far as who's really powerful in a cosmic space sense. With his work on Thor, his work on Silver Surfer Black. So I think this stuff is definitely there'll be a callback to it. And he's still a big name over at Marvel. So we'd be remiss to not bring up how awesome King in Black was. That is definitely a major piece of this year.
Next up, one of my personal favorites this year was Beta Ray Bill, the mini-series by Daniel Warren Johnson, drawn and art by, which does feed a little bit into King in Black. It kind of came out towards the end of King in Black. You see a little bit, it kind of begins with him fighting the venomized Fing Fang Foom. But this was awesome. There's so many big fans of Beta Ray Bill. We hadn't got a whole lot with him. He's been in Venom or Guardians of the Galaxy. He'd been around in the Donny Cates sphere.
Right.
But I feel like with this series, he got a lot more fans. People loved the series and built up his mythology with his ship, Scuttlebutt, and the, it transforming into his, robot companion. Beta Ray Bill getting a new weapon at the end of it. This overall was such a great story, and this is one that I'm going to recommend to people in the collected edition of, this is a great standalone story. And I think Beta Ray Bill is just at the cusp of how big he's going to be. As soon as we start seeing him in movies and everything, he's such a great character. So I love this miniseries. It's one of my favorite Marvel books of the year.
Yeah, I'm happy they just gave him a miniseries.
Yeah.
Once again, we've been open 7 years. People constantly come and ask for Beta Ray Bill, and there's never enough material.
Yeah.
So this was great to have around. This is an evergreen trade paperback we will always have in stock now. So next up, I'm going to talk about two strong female lead Marvel characters who have had series here and there, but none of them have been as strong as they have been lately. First is Black Cat by Jed Mckay. This series shocked me. Andy and I, we split up things to read every week, and I can't say this was my first choice that I wanted to read. It just kind of fell into my lap. I needed to read it. And within a few issues, I was just drawn in to where I was really looking forward to reading this every single week. Jed Mckay, he has Black Cat's voice down perfect. I've joked about it that one of her powers, because she talks about it, is her power of style.
Yeah.
And I think that's wonderful. I think that's great. She has this high opinion of herself, but she can pull it off. She's a master thief, a mastermind. He plays all that. He didn't have to give her a bunch of extra powers or anything like that. Great series, still a great series.
Yeah.
The next one, of course, is Black Widow. Kelly Thompson took over, and I think what she realized was Black Widow, she's great on her own, but you know what? She needs to build her own team. She is a seasoned Avenger. She is, as good as she is on her own, she's a leader at this point. So you get Yelena in there. You get the new character of Lucy, who they're calling Marigold. You even get Anya Corazon in there. That series has also been incredible. Really good read. So I just had to bring up those as two Marvel reads I've really enjoyed this year.
They did a great job, especially putting Adam Hughes on the covers. That got a lot of people in the beginning just be like, I'm getting it for the Adam Hughes covers. And then they read it and was like, oh my gosh, this is actually a really compelling, that first story arc where she had the amnesia,
Yeah,
and she had
the
a
other
family
life
and everything. You felt
messed
really
up.
bad for her, and this kind of life she'll never have.
Yeah.
Started off great first story, and it has been, I mean, one of my favorite reads.
And then that was followed by the Apogee stuff.
Yeah.
Which was great. So, yeah.
Next up, a big event this year, Heroes Reborn, which was funny because, a Marvel event, they can go a bunch of different directions. They could be, and it usually takes to the end to really figure out what you thought about them. But they can be a huge deal, like King in Black. They could be a smaller story, like Empire ended up being kind of a more focused on the Kree and the Skrull and kind of establishing what their roles in the Marvel universe is. But this was one we didn't know a whole lot about how it was going to be going in. I was excited because it was Jason Aaron working on it, Ed McGuinness. But the idea of bringing in the Squadron Supreme, I mean, I know a bit about them, but they're definitely not on my high list of must-read characters. But I think the format of it, where, yes, there is a through story that we followed with Blade, trying to figure out this Elseworld that he was stuck in where the Avengers never formed, was a really good through line. But the main thing was just a bunch of really fun short stories, origins, everything with this other universe's version of basically the Justice League.
I fully agree. Reading about, I never knew how much I liked the Squadron Supreme till I read this. Yeah. Each book focuses on one of them, and it's a lot darker than Marvel tends to get, but it is earned and it is worth it.
Yeah.
I mean, Andy and I, we really both enjoyed Heroes Reborn. It's one of the few. So Marvel event books, they tend to be a lot of people by the beginning, and by the end, some people have fallen off. This was the only one I've seen. We had more people signing up towards the end because people would pick up a one shot and be like, "Oh man, this is really good."
Yeah, having the different artists, like the Rocket one. Was it Stoko on it?
Yeah, Stoko.
Yeah, which is like, this is so original. The stories are dark, but still have a kind of a fun feel to them, that because we're in such a weird world. Probably maybe my favorite event book in a while. Other than King in Black, it was more self-contained for sure.
Yeah, I ultimately enjoyed it more than King in Black. King in Black was so ambitious, though. And when you're working with that much ambition, it's hard to pull the whole thing off. This one was more insular, and so Jason Aaron was able to very precisely tell his tale exactly how he wanted it told. It didn't feel like it was being editorialized very much, which, he has a lot of sway over at Marvel. Yeah. And I think that's why it came out so good.
Yeah, and it just... I feel like that book, more than any of them, was about the ride and not the destination.
There you go.
No one really cared about how this was going to end. Yeah. Like, how did they get this universe? But the more interesting thing is, what's the next story going to be? What weird thing are you going to show me in this other universe? So
another one that we will keep around on the shelves, recommending to people
just
who
sold
want
it.
A solid read with some characters they know and maybe some that they don't know and they didn't really know before it. They needed to know them.
I've sold a few copies of this to people to give as Christmas gifts by giving them the pitch of it's a contained story. It's fun. So definitely recommend that one.
So next up we have Moon Knight. Finally, another Moon Knight series, and once again, same writer who's doing Black Cat, Jed Mckay, is on it. This is the year where I learned how much I like Jed Mckay's writing. So I don't know if I've run into anybody who has read the series and not liked it. This is kind of what us Moon Knight fans have been waiting for. Another strong series with the character, with a writer who knows what they're doing. But more than that, there are some major additions to the Moon Knight mythos going on in this book. In fact, it's so fresh in the last issue, I can't even say. But, it's a major new character introduced in issue 1 and 2 that they finally clear up. Who is this character in just the latest issue? And I am hooked. I can't wait to see where it goes from here. The art has also been fantastic. Some of the best covers that Marvel has been doing have been the Moon Knight covers and variants. So, real strong series. I know it's second half of the year series, but looking forward to where it's going after this.
Next up is a series that actually started back in, I believe, 2018. Was the Chip Zdarsky's Daredevil run, but it was kind of a sleeper hit. The people who were reading it really loved it, but it didn't quite find its footing until, of course, the big reveal of Elektra taking on the role of Daredevil when Matt Murdock was in jail. I just started reading this run just like a week ago, reading volume 1 of this, but I've also read towards the end of this run also. It is fantastic. Definitely redefining the character and Elektra and what his place in the Marvel Universe is, who Matt Murdock is as a character. And I mean, I don't think this version of Elektra is going anywhere anytime soon. We've got the Daredevil Woman Without Fear series coming up. We've got the Elektra Black, White, and Blood. This is a great time for Elektra and all of the, without saying too much, a lot of the Daredevil, Elektra, Kingpin, that level, those characters. I mean, we're going to be seeing a lot more of those, and I think this version of Elektra as Daredevil is going to be around for a while.
There was some good stuff with Bullseye in here too.
Oh yeah, all this the pretty shocking Bullseye storyline from a little while ago, and we're just getting into Devil's Reign, the big event. We've only got issue 1 of that, but it's looking to be a really cool ending for all this run on Daredevil.
So another great mini series, and this one I think has been needed for a while, was Kang the Conqueror. Mm-hmm. Can they finally sort of clear up for people who, haven't been reading about Kang since he was in the Fantastic Four back in like the 60s? Who is this character? Why does he have so many forms? This book, I feel like the writers had outlined it very well.
You had to, yeah.
To have pulled it off the way they did. The issue 5 just came out. The series is over. I do recommend it. I think this would be great to read as a graphic novel. Mm-hmm. You may have to take a breath between certain parts of it, though, because it's pretty deep. Really enjoyed it. I think more than anything, it shows you how there are different versions of Kang, what it would be like to be this character who's all throughout time. But more than that, we needed some motivations. Mm-hmm. We needed some motivations for how did Kang ever get the way he is, and why is it some of his different forms act different from one another?
Yeah.
And all of that is explained very, very well by the end. He's a real compelling character. I don't think Marvel would have released this if they weren't really setting him up for bigger things in the wider Marvel universe.
We already know that he's going to be in Ant-Man, Quantumania, and all of that. And this is smart because they did need a book about Kang that you could point to and say, "Well, read this."
Yeah.
Because he's had run-ins with the Avengers, Fantastic Four, but nothing that has been solidly about him. And like you said, what his motivations are, what makes him tick, why is he the way he is, and just explaining that weird form of, I thought he was a pharaoh. Well, I thought he was somehow related to the Fantastic Four. This explains all of that.
This book starts with a young Nathaniel Richards, and his enemy is one of the Kangs. So I mean, talk about how can you do better inner conflict than it's you and a different version of yourself. Now sort that out. And how did it happen? And but all the stuff with Ravonna, also great, handled very, very well.
Next up is a few. We're going to talk about 2 of them that just started, but have already, cemented themselves as being some of the biggest books that are going to be this year and next year. This is Hulk #1 from Donny Cates and Ryan Ottley. What a drastic shift of tone and story from Immortal Hulk to this Hulk, and still both fantastic. This one, of course, with the idea of Bruce Banner piloting the Hulk, almost like a big mech suit, and having part of his brain segmented as the engine, where Hulk fights non-stop waves of enemies to keep his rage filled up. It just got the solicitations for some stuff coming up next year, where we're going to see a big crossover between Hulk and Thor, as they're going to throw down. A awesome series so far. We've only got 2 issues of it out, but I can't wait to see where this series is going.
So funny enough, before the show, I was out on the floor, and a customer who doesn't read a lot of Marvel, he pointed to the Hulk, and he's like, I don't know if Immortal was really my thing. What's this new one? And I'm like, it's really good. And it was issue number 2, the one where it's the Hulk, and inside his head is a little window, and you see little Bruce Banner. And he's like, this new writer, how could he add anything new to Hulk? I haven't seen anything new in a while. And I was like, look at the cover. That tells the story. And he's like, he's looking at the cover. He goes, who's that guy in there? And I said, that's Bruce Banner. And he's like, interesting. Well, why is he in there? And I said, he's piloting the Hulk. And dude ended up buying it. He was like, okay, this sounds fresh.
Yep.
So it's funny. The cover, it just worked as magic. I barely even had to say anything. So the other one, of course, is the new Venom series. So Ram V and Al Ewing have taken over the writing for Venom. So far, it's been mostly Ram V, though. Al Ewing helped write the space stuff with Eddie Brock in issue 1. But since then, it's been Ram V. Now we're switching to a tale that's more about Dylan, which has been really cool so far. Introduced some new awesome things. Issue 3 just dropped. Everyone that I've been chatting with has been enjoying it. I know I have. After the Null stuff, where do you go? I think a new character, or newish character with Dylan, with the symbiote power, is a great angle that they've been working on. So real strong start with Venom as well. We would be silly not to mention this new series, even though it's only 3 issues in right now. So now we're going to get to DC books.
Yep. Starting off with one that we've only got a couple of issues so far. It's already setting itself up of being one of the biggest titles, even going into next year. That is Dark Knights of Steel, the Tom Taylor led book, where it's the DC universe but set in a medieval world, which sounds like a very 80s, 90s DC what if setup thing, but this is done in such a interesting way. The reinterpretation of the characters and their relationships. It's not a one-for-one retelling of the origin of Superman or Batman in any of those ways, but this is going to be a 12-part series, and already people are so on board of seeing what's the next version of a character we're going to get. And I could see, with stuff like Injustice and Deceased, I could see this going on as well, to have many incarnations and mini series and stuff about this cool world, and the kind of weird way they set up the hierarchy of the Superman's family in this, and Black Lightning and the rival kingdoms. Really cool. Game of Thrones meets the DC universe for sure. So Dark Knights of Steel is definitely has been one of my favorite DC books come out recently.
I like that DC has been bold and has started offering these 12-issue series that they tell you are 12 issues. Yep. Sometimes I feel like the publishers, they announce a new series and they don't tell you it's going to end, but they kind of already have planned it's going to end. With this one, it lets the writing have room to breathe, to really build this series up more than you'll just get in 5 or 6 issues. So that's cool that DC's been doing a little more of that. So next DC book I want to talk about, when we talk about 2021, one of the big books has to be Tynion's run on Batman.
Yeah.
Tom King left the series. They brought Tanyan over from Detective Comics. I don't think anybody was ready for what he was about to unleash with all these new characters. The art style of the book changed a lot. I think that was a little bit divisive. Not everybody liked it had a bit of a manga edge to it, but I thought it was refreshing. I like a lot of Tynion's new characters. Some may say there are too many, but better to have, at least they're all strong. And I will say he gave all of them one-shots. He gave all of them origin stories. So I did appreciate all that. I think that the Joker War arc really showed how good he could write Batman. Then, of course, we got into Fear State right at the end, which was really cool and done very well. and now he's off of it.
Yeah.
Now Batman is shifting to somebody else, and that's what you have to do with these characters who have been their tales have been told, since before many of us were born.
Yep.
You've got to switch to different writers who are going to see different angles and different ways. That's how to keep them fresh. That's how to continue them. And so, like Tynion's run or not, which I think most people did, it was certainly different and refreshing to the series.
Next up, how could we forget Future State, which, man, that was such a roller coaster, but really brought us some new, interesting things. Of course, this is the jump forward in time, several different time frames. Yes. Is it 5 years? Is it 10 years? All the way to thousands of years. Yeah. But we had a lot of series. Some of them were great. Some of them were fine. People all had their favorite ones. But what we got out of this was what we'll be talking about soon. Yara Flor.
Correct.
Jonathan Kent taking over as Superman. The Superman arc we're getting into with Action Comics with Superman fighting in the arenas on Warworld. We have Jace Fox as Batman.
Next Batman.
We've got the new Flash. There were so many ideas and things that I don't know if we necessarily knew going into it that were going to be spin out of it. And, I don't know if we've actually seen the end of the ramifications for Future State. There definitely could be some more stuff. They kind of wrapped up the Magistrate stuff in Batman, but those are characters that they have invented and could definitely come back in future things. So this is for sure, in hindsight, a very ambitious story and that had some really, really strong titles within it. Dark Detective with Batman was awesome. I guess it was just called Future State Wonder Woman. Correct. That was about Yara Flor. Yep. Was great. All of that I think was really, really cool. And yeah, I'm excited to see what is going to come from this in the future, especially like Yara Flor.
The Titans Academy with Red X.
Red X, that was huge. I mean, that got reprinted in a deluxe edition.
Yep.
So yeah, it was more impactful, I think, than most people realized.
So many people might know this if you read industry news, but at the beginning of the year, DC was making some very big changes to their staffing, and that affected the comics a lot. I think Future State originally was supposed to be something they did a long term, but when they launched it, they're like, okay, well, we're just going to sort of do a couple issues and then see if we can build up to it. I think they really challenged the writers to make it work, and it felt like the editors... a lot of them were gone.
Yeah.
They no longer had them. And I think the writers got the chance to do some really creative stuff. I think Tynion really stepped up to the plate, and a few other of the writers. But I will say, if you try to look... So us reviewing this as it went, we tried to keep up with all the timelines. It didn't all end up working out.
Yeah.
That is true. Particularly the Batman and Next Batman stuff. That timeline is... You just have to roll with the fact that... there were changes over at DC.
Yeah.
So, but at least some of the ideas are sticking around. So the next one to talk about is out of Future State, and that is Wonder Girl. So Yara Flor, you could tell she was designed from the ground up by Joelle Jones. I feel like Joelle Jones, she just fell in love with this character design. I mean, look at that cover. It's just incredible. I think out of all the Future State characters, Yara Flor is going to do the best, continue the most. I could be wrong. Maybe it'll be Jace Fox. Maybe it'll be Red X. But this is what I think is going to do it. And her series has been a very interesting read. The art is fantastic. The art's fantastic to it. So I think almost everybody I talked to about the comic, the read's good and we're interested in what's going to happen, but the story unfolds a little bit. It's paced like you got to wait for it. But the art, everyone mentions how good it is. Yeah. So Wonder Girl, excellent series to bring up that started this year.
And one that still is not over yet, but kind of took the comic book stores by storm is Harley Quinn Eat, Bang, Kill Tour. We're up to issue 4 or 5 at this point. But this is, if I hear a general comment about the series, it's this is what Harley Quinn needs to be, and can we get more of this?
Yeah.
So this is, of course, a spin-off or a continuation of the animated show that is now on HBO, but it has really carved out its own place as being a mature, over-the-top, violent, funny take on Harley Quinn that I think DC is probably looking at and saying, "Hey, this is a whole new market that maybe we can tap into."
There's gonna be more of this and this sort of thing. I mean, there just has to be how successful it is.
Yeah, it's rare to see DC allow some of the stuff that this series has done just with the language and the content, but the way people have responded to it shows them that, oh, there is people out there wanting this. And I think especially for Harley Quinn and the places they've taken her relationship with Ivy, and bringing Catwoman in there and everything, this is, I mean, one of our best selling. Every time an issue comes out of it, people are scrambling for this.
Yeah, I love all the companies. They all have their good points. Marvel has Disney behind them, and that's great. Disney makes a lot of good choices, but it also, in a way, hamstrings you for you're not going to be able to have such dark content.
Yeah.
They just won't do it. So DC is smart enough to do things like this, things like Soul Plumber, the Black Label books, all the Joe Hill stuff from before, and that's great. That's a market. They really aren't competing with Marvel on that front at all. So next up, we have, of course, Nightwing. I have never seen so many people signed up to Nightwing at once than we have signed up on our poll list right now, and it is well earned. So Tom Taylor, another Tom Taylor book, but Bruno Redondo, the artist, his addition to this book, what he does for the art to this book is just incredible. His ideas, just the way he shows action, the little details he puts in, it's people often are like, why read comics when you could read books or watch a movie? When you see the masters at work, then you realize there are some things that work best in this medium, and you'll find it in Nightwing. Issue 87 just came out. It's the issue where the whole comic, you can lay out all the pages. You'd have to cut them out. It's not designed to do that. And it is one continuous story. That's the sort of thing that they're pulling off in this book.
Yeah.
So just incredible. It's been a fun ride. They've introduced that Nightwing has a sister. Nightwing gets a dog that has 2 names. Its regular name, Haley, and its secret identity name, Bitewing. So just a really cool series. Now they're setting up Dick Grayson to sort of be like a Bruce Wayne character for Bloodhaven, where he has all this money and new responsibility of what to do with it. So fantastic series. I really don't have to sell it to anybody who's even heard anything about it. So
next up, another big thing from DC was Infinite Frontier, which was a kind of a whole new, what do they call them? It's what New 52 was. It's what Rebirth was. Infinite Frontier and Infinite Destinies and all of that is a new jumping on point,
right?
But also kind of a redirecting of certain things. And Infinite Frontier has been a really cool one. Definitely diving deeper into the multiverse and now the Omniverse, bringing in characters like President Superman and Thomas Wayne Batman. This is most likely going to lead to the reintroduction of the Justice Society. Has really kind of widened the scales. And I think one of the best things that this has done is basically say, every story matters. Everything that you've read before matters. It's happened. We can reference it. We can pull characters from it. Characters will remember it. And yeah, I feel like this is a start of some pretty interesting stuff. Now we have Justice League Incarnate, that we still haven't seen the end of where this is leading to. But Joshua Williamson has done such a great job now being one of the top people at DC, kind of steering the ship for the big ideas at DC. And I'm excited what's going to happen with this one next year.
Yeah, DC has a history of occasionally sort of erasing everything and starting fresh. It's like he said, okay, that makes me angry.
Yeah.
Let's not do that.
Yeah.
You know, and Death Metal ended, and they needed to continue on with that scope of story.
Yeah.
And he went even bigger.
Yeah.
So next up is Batman Reptilian by Garth Ennis with some amazing art painted by Liam Sharp. The outside of this more reflects Garth Ennis's mind than the
Yeah.
interior art. This was a wild, messed up, probably the most messed up Batman stories I've ever read. I don't know if it's for everyone. Batman is vaguely a hero in this story as he mocks his villains who are being hunted down and murdered by a new beast. But I just couldn't stop reading it. And every time it came in, I was like, both like, you know, I'm reading it with my hand over my face, like, oh my God, Batman, why? Why are you saying this? Why are
That
you
had the
acting this
most of
way?
you stopping and being like, look what Batman just said.
I know.
Like, it's when you feel never felt so bad for Killer Croc after Batman shames him so bad that you're like, Batman, back off of Killer Croc. That's rough.
Yeah. So, but it's such a wild book. It made the list of ones I wanted to bring up and talk about.
Definitely one of the highlights of the year is just me watching you read that book.
Yeah, it's like when one of your like sort of dark-minded friends come in. They're like, "Oh, Batman, whatever." It's like, "We'll read this."
Yeah.
They're gonna love that book.
And next up, this one, we've been kind of going back and forth talking about these, but we've both been reading,
Yes.
and both have thoroughly been enjoying The Flash, which I feel like is another one that's kind of a sleeper hit, but how this storyline began with the Flash getting thrown into different bodies of speedsters, as you see on the cover, with Impulse and Jay Garrick and Reverse Flash. This has been a very ambitious book with, the art style changed to look like Super Friends.
Yeah, that issue was great.
All of that has been really good. Having Wally West back as the centralized character, I think, is great. Him looking for a job. You get a lot of that storytelling that you don't always get with superhero comics. You know, right now they really like to go big, multiverse, all of that. But you actually see, Flash getting a job and, it doesn't pay being a superhero, so what's he going to do?
Him actually hanging out with his daughter for a whole issue.
Yes.
Super things happen, but...
Yeah, so I feel like this is a great, well-rounded comic and a awesome continuation of Flash.
It feels like a classic comic in that way, where it's not all linked in with a million other characters and what's going on in the multiverse and all. So after Future State, a new Flash writer took over, Jeremy Adams, and he brought back Wally West. And I read this interview just lately where he's talking about the book, and his intention was, he says he thought Wally West has been through enough pain. I want to really let him be Flash and have some Flash adventures.
Yeah.
And that is what he has done, but in the most creative way. There's a Flash story. It's almost like you're in the story as the reader.
Yeah, just recently,
Yeah, I mean, it's just a lot of breaths of fresh air every single issue of this Flash run. Honestly, every issue that comes out, I'm like, can he keep this up? Because he's not blowing it up big. He's just writing individual good stories.
Yeah.
How long can he do that? You eventually have to blow it up bigger, but... I don't know. So hats off to him.
And this one we got the Velociraptor that had the Speed Force and stuff.
Yeah.
You get such like classic comic ideas. You're like, that is awesome. Like you turn the page and you see something new, and it's just really cool.
All right, so now we're going to get to indie books that we thought were noteworthy or just really like.
Like Geiger. I already knew that I was really going to like this. I've been a big fan of Jeff Johns' writing and Gary Frank's art. And when they announced this, I was excited about it, but I didn't know what to think. I love the character design to begin with. I feel like that's a big selling point of this, is how Geiger looks. I mean, it's everything that I thought that was really cool when I was younger. Skulls, capes, glowing, fighting sticks. I mean, so cool. But this turned into a very, not heartwarming, but very, not just beat-em-up action book. This is a very human story in a post-apocalyptic world about a man who has become this creature, this Geiger, this irradiated man, protecting his family who are in a fallout shelter that he doesn't even know if they're still in there. But his dedication to protecting them from raiders, from all this stuff. That part was fantastic. Also, the world building with Las Vegas being this weird, every casino is a different kind of empire.
Yeah.
Was an awesome idea. And then what we kind of learned towards the end of the series is this is a bigger world than just this one book. This is a world where there was superheroes. There were other things like superheroes, very reminiscent of just comics through the years, that we are going to find out more about. So we have Junkyard Joe coming out next year about the robot character we saw briefly in this one. And I love that this is just so much. It's kind of the world building Jeff Johns did at DC, but now it's 100% his, and what kind of world is he building?
That's what I was going to say. Jeff Johns is a fantastic writer, but writing's a job.
Yeah.
And so some of his writing at DC, while it's good, he was under deadlines. Mm-hmm. He was having to work with a character that he didn't originally make. This feels effortless. This feels like he's doing exactly what he wants to do. Yeah. And it's wonderful.
Yeah, and we're getting ready for that 80-page giant that's going to be coming out, that's going to have a lot of stories about all the other characters in it. So, I mean, also they put out the Volume 1 just not too long ago, a $9.99 Volume 1. Yeah. So if you haven't read this one, definitely go out and pick up this Volume 1 of Geiger.
So the next one was launched, it might have been the same week. It was so close.
Yeah.
Nocterra by Scott Snyder and Tony S. Daniel. So where do you go after you've done Dark Knights of Metal and Death Metal? Well, you go do your own thing. Once again, now you don't have, AT&T and DC, telling you can and can't do things. So this book has been awesome. It's so good that it was optioned very early on. Mm-hmm. And I believe, is it going to be a Netflix show?
I think so. I think that's what I heard.
Yeah, so this is very strong. It has a really good villain on Blacktop Bill. Really scary villain. The world itself is neat. It has a bit of a Walking Dead feel, but definitely fresh and definitely its own thing. Just because you compare something to something else, because I like apocalyptic stories. And so they all feel like something else because you have your favorite apocalyptic stories.
Yeah.
And that's what they're going for in this one. They explain the characters' backstories and what happened to their family. They explain sort of how the world works, how you can get turned into a monster. And on top of that, the art is incredible. Look at the cover. If you like the cover, you're going to like the interior arts.
Just so visually interesting with semi-trucks covered in Christmas lights. And, when you're saying, where do you go after death metal? You get actually darker. The world becomes even darker, but in the same way, still really fun.
Yeah, a semi-truck just plowing down the road, trying to get away from demons. Where the light is you're safe. Where the dark is, you're not. I mean, that's as primal as it gets.
Yeah.
So,
next up, have to mention the year of Spawn that we have had. I mean, it's so funny that a character that started, showing my age, when I was very young or like a year old or something, is still going and is as strong as it was ever. So we had Spawn Universe come out, which was the beginning of the whole new era of Spawn that is spinning off into what we have now, which is King Spawn, Gunslinger Spawn. We're getting ready for the Scorch to come out, the team book with all the Spawns. We've had all the news about the Spawn movie. Really, we don't know a whole lot about it, but the talk around it has been gearing up even more. Spawn is we have so many people on it, so many people getting all the variant covers. It has truly been, like, Todd McFarlane has done such an incredible job of this property, and it shows if you stick with something and you have a good idea, it can last. And now Spawn is one of those characters that is generational, that has, is now up there with some of the long-running DC and Marvel characters as, like, this is a one of the classic superheroes.
I have seen, like with my own eyes in the store, father and son, like father talking about, well, here's how Spawn started,
Yeah.
and son is buying the new Spawn stuff.
Yeah.
I thought this character would have ended ages back. I mean, but McFarlane is an artistic genius, and he is also a business genius, in my opinion. I think I read him talking about the movie idea a few years back, and I was just like, pish posh.
Yeah.
Who knows? I totally believe it now. I don't know what Farlane can't do at this point if he wants to. And he seems more prolific and invigorated than ever.
Mm-hmm.
On top of that, McFarlane treats comic stores very well.
Yeah.
As a store owner, he does things that make sense, that help our bottom line, sends exclusive things. I really appreciate that. Him and Kirkman, I mean, they got some good people over at Image that really care about us stores.
Yeah.
And so the appreciation goes right back.
All the way to Spawn is still a $2.99 comic.
Think about
which
that.
Is unheard of. And not just the main Spawn, Gunslinger, King Spawn, they're all $2.99. The issue ones were deluxe size, so they were maybe $4.99 or something. But in interviews, people say, "Why do you do that?" And he's like, "I don't need the money. I don't need to raise my prices." So he said, "It's going to be that price for as long as I can keep it going."
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, of course, quite possibly the biggest and maybe even the best indie comic that all through 2021, Something is Killing the Children, a book that just built up and up and up. I think the one other than number one that's worth the most, I think it's like issue number 5, because as with most comics, a lot of people buy the number one and then people start slacking off. But then if a series is good enough, especially an indie series, it goes back up.
Mm-hmm.
And that 5 was that turning point where the print run was low, and then everyone was like, this is just great. Originally slated to be a mini series, now it's becoming a whole universe.
It's hard to believe it. Like, how would you have done that in a mini series? Yeah. There's so much. I mean, it has spin-off books and everything.
James Tynion, he must have been writing secret stuff off to the side for years to have these characters that are so cool, these worlds that are so fleshed out, the style in them too.
Yeah.
The masks. I mean, it's great. It's really, really good. It deserves the acclaim, in my opinion. I've been saying on our Sunday show where we sell comics, when I sell Something's Killing the Children, the early ones I sell are worth so much money. I'm like, this is like Walking Dead money, though. And when a show happens, it quite possibly is going to be the new Walking Dead show. It's just, we can kind of see it far out this time because, Walking Dead allowed us to see that things can get that big. So, I mean, I could go on and on about this, but we've lumped in all his stuff. Sorry, James Tynion, you had too many good things this year. So, of course, House of Slaughter has spun out of it where, I mean, that's smart. It's like, Something's Killing the Children, very focused on Erica. House of Slaughter, hey, let's broaden that. Let's tell history of the house. Let's show more about the side characters. So, of course, this is only a few issues in right now, but already doing quite well. Then we also have Nice House on the Lake. Now, I know we're in the indie section, and we're talking about a DC book, but it feels very indie.
It is very indie. Batman and Superman are not showing up in this. And, I mean, this series is awesome. I mean, it has that feeling of, like, back when Lost was on TV. And you read an issue, and you're like, oh my gosh, what do you think that means? It's a very water cooler book, just sort of the world it's setting up. I got, my dad to read this one, and now I pull 2 copies, one for me and one for him. And then, when we have lunch on Thursdays and stuff, we talk about, well, what do you think? What do you think that this character actually is? And what do you think, is going on on the house and all of that? So I loved it for that fact, and I love it that, that DC is putting it out. This could easily have gone to Image or Boom or anything, but good job, DC, in saying, yeah, you can do this book here.
Nice House on the Lake has a number one. And I say this about a few books from the past. Like, I feel like 100 Bullets, I know it's a long time ago, it's like this, where you can give somebody the number one, and the premise is so strong that they're hooked on the first issue, the premise and characters.
Yeah.
So, another great one by Tanyan. And, of course, there's also Department of Truth. the Tanyan corner here. So everybody knows, about this book and why it's great. we're going to move past Tanyan. So, because I mean, we could also talk about Wind.
Oh, yep, yeah.
So
the more you sit here, the more you could think of stuff that he's done.
Yep, the year of Tanyan.
Joker.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Joker. Oh, Lord. Okay, so next up,
Radiant Black. This has been such an interesting book to watch. So I was on board with issue 1 because I'm a big fan of Invincible, and this definitely gave me Invincible vibes. I really like Kyle Higgins as a writer. Did great stuff on way back in the New 52, Nightwing, his Mighty Morphin Power Rangers.
He revitalized Power Rangers.
He revitalized Power Rangers to now one of Boom's biggest books that's like IP driven.
Yeah.
We have customers who only get all the new Power Rangers stuff. It's created its own little section. So when he announced he was doing a book at Image, a superhero book, I was intrigued. And then reading it, this has been such a cool... it's kind of a love letter to like how comics and marketing and the twists and turns in comics. It's just everything about this. It starts out as a very kind of straightforward. I now forget what people associate it with. It's a little Green Lantern. This down on his luck guy gets this suit and this ability and everything. But it had that angle of he's kind of a has-been. He's moving back in with his parents because he's a failed writer.
But then the big twist.
Yes. And then, I guess it's not a spoiler now because it was many issues ago. I don't know. We still don't know. Did he die? Right. But his friend who was with him the whole time is kind of like the secondary character, whatever, took up the mantle of it. And now he was learning how to be Radiant Black. And then they introduced Radiant Red and all these other things. This is a great look for people who want to write comics and everything, how you keep this momentum going. And even though the sales aren't number 1 was a good, decent seller and everything, people are still talking about this. We did a video not that long ago of us unboxing the Radiant Black mystery box, which was a whole adventure in of itself. We found out that there's going to be a big event book coming next year that's going to involve Radiant Black and some other characters.
A true crossover event.
A true crossover. And then I think today they announced that there's going to be a mini-series about Radiant Red. This is, for one, you could tell a series that Image believes in to give Kyle Higgins so much stuff to work with. But also it has to show how much love he has for his creation. And you can really see the passion behind it when you read the book. So one of my favorite series of the year and continues to be such a fun read.
Yeah, so this is far past issue 1, okay? And within the last couple issues, there was a glow-in-the-dark cover. There was an issue you could read by blacklight that glue, and I don't mean just the opening. Like, every page was done in blacklight reflective ink. And then there was an issue that had a QV code in the art, within the story, that Andy scanned, and it took us to a secret site where we were able to buy the mystery box. I mean, that's in the last few issues.
That's not issue number 1 where most people put their marketing push. That's a long-term game plan.
Probably the coolest, just like outside the comic stuff of any book this year. Probably. Okay, so next up, got to bring up Red Room by Ed Pisgoer. He has taken comics. He's taken people who are like, oh, comics, they're for babies. And he's like, really, read my comic because it will traumatize you.
Yeah.
The art is incredible. The story is there. You're reading about some really messed up people. But, that's what fiction is. Fiction, you're not always reading about heroes. Sometimes you want to read about the villains. You want to read about the depraved people.
It's kind of a window into another world. It's not good. It's not bad. It's a portal. You're seeing someone else's life and, just a snapshot of that, which is a very interesting storytelling method.
Yeah, I think too often depravity just turns into sort of like just nudity and stuff like that. And while there's a little bit of that Red Room, that is not what it's about. It is about truly depraved people who are depraved in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
But telling it in a manner that's not over the line
or
in like,
sensationalized.
yeah, it's hard to describe.
Yeah, it doesn't glamorize anything.
That's true. That's a good way to put
Yeah.
it. It doesn't really glamorize anything. So a real unified vision. You know, Pisgoer's doing the art, he is writing it, and there's nothing else like it.
No,
Is
I
what
don't
I'd
think we could
say.
take another thing like it.
I don't
think
either. It's an updated EC. It's
Yeah.
like EC for the modern era, is what I would say about Red Room.
Next up is another big hit this year.
Yeah.
Everybody knows about it now. Stray Dogs. What a minor book that has
Blew up.
So Stray Dogs, just a when we first saw it, the thing that captured us was the contrast between the dark storytelling and the art, which was the Don Bluth style. All dogs go to heaven. All of that art style together, but works so well together. You know, it doesn't feel like this is two separate things and you crammed them together. It works seamlessly. It has what I feel like, and we've only seen a little bit of it, started a new genre of comics with these kind of animal-centric comics that can be not just little kid stories. They're, you know, Stray Dogs is a pretty mature title. It's charming, it's horrifying, it's sad, it's funny. It's, you know, I don't think it might have not been as successful if it wasn't for the homage variant covers.
Yeah, that's
the
what I was
horror
going to bring
movie
up. All the horror
variant.
movie ones brought people in, and then they loved the content.
But it could have never have, you know, gotten the sequel series it's about to get, or the one shots, or the free comic book day book, if the story wasn't there, and the story was definitely there for this.
So we have to bring up Echolands.
Yeah.
I don't know. This is definitely not the biggest seller of all these ones we're talking about, but what an ambitious book. So sometimes it annoys us retailers when a creator decides to do a book of a different size or style, or you got to flip it, or, you know. So when this arrived, we're like scratching our head. I wonder if it's going to be worth it. Cool cover, neat name to it. I mean, you open and you start looking at the art, and I mean, it just knocked us over.
Yeah. This book could. I mean, the story is interesting. It's not a super complex story, but you could sell this without any dialogue in it, and you just show it to somebody, and it would almost be like one of those very sophisticated picture books. But there is a story there, and it's very interesting. It's one of those you want to see what's next, because you want to see, you know, what are they going to show me? It's going to be crazy. It's mixed media. I mean, but it's the highest form of art in a story like this.
I can't even imagine how long it takes him to put together this book. So if you go to a store where you are allowed to just open a book, or you can wait for the trade, just take a look in the first issue.
I think they announced the trade too is going to be, of course, it's going to be long ways, and it's hardcover. And I'm thinking, like, if anything deserves like a nice, like, large hardcover, it's this book.
Yep. Okay, and then,
of course, Last Ronin. Oh my gosh, another one that was so big.
Is so big.
We're still waiting for the last one. Yeah. It's so big and so...
it lasted through the year.
Yes. So I remember when the last one came out, we were like, are we going to get the last issue before Christmas? People were like, haha, yeah, you know, we're going to get it. No, we're not going to get it. But way to bring people back to Ninja Turtles as an IP. Yes, the main Ninja Turtle series has been fantastic from IDW. It is such a good series. But the return of Eastman and Laird to a story that apparently they've had for a long time.
Yeah, I think it's, they say 20 years in the making.
Yeah, but this kind of Old Man Logan type story, the weird format this is in, the size is like, we can't find any comic that was this size.
They were that uncompromising.
Yes.
That they created a size there's no bag and board for.
But I don't know if there's a day that I'm here that I work that someone doesn't come in and say, do you have Last Ronin? Yeah. This branched out beyond comic circles of people to people who maybe were fans of the show or the comics originally and brought them back in. And I think that is an incredible feat for something.
Well, you know, it touches everybody's childhood who remembers Ninja Turtles from the 80s and 90s, but we've all grown up. And when you grow up, there are parts of life that turn a shade darker. Well, the turtle now has to deal with that. I mean, who doesn't want to see, there's one left. Who is it? What have they been through?
Yeah.
Just like we've all been through things as you get older.
Yeah.
So, I got to bring up Berserker. So this book, just the number one alone. Okay, so this is by Matt Kindt with Keanu Reeves. Obviously, Keanu had this idea, and he's like, I have this character, I have this story, I want to tell it in comic, that way it's all nice and storyboarded out, and then it's going to be, they're making a movie from it, they're making an animated show, and he went to Matt Kindt, which is a great idea, because I think Matt Kindt's
good person to go to.
Excellent writer, who I think is still affordable. Maybe he's not anymore, though. And the art is done by Ron Garney. So this was the number one highest selling original title of the 21st century. That number one. 650,000 copies sold of that issue number one. So let that sink in.
Yeah.
Also, it broke a record on Kickstarter. It raised 1.45 million on Kickstarter, making it the biggest comic related Kickstarter ever as well.
Yeah.
So record breaking. It's still going on. I think issue 6 just came out, which the latest issue is actually my favorite one. So got to talk about Berserker.
Another one I feel like we both have many crazy opinions on, but this was the year of Bad Idea.
Yeah.
And there are many bad ideas, but there are many really good books.
Yeah.
I mean,
the books are strong.
The books were very strong. We had ENIAC, we had Tankers. I love Tankers. The creative teams they have on them. Also, a lot of Matt Kindt. We've got a lot of Matt Kindt reading
and David
this year.
Lapham.
David Lapham. Who
did the art for this?
They're crazy marketing schemes. I thought for a second, should I say schemes? Yeah, they're schemes. they're scheming. Their golden button initiative, where if you're the first person to get it, you get a gold button. But you could also trade that gold button in for a rock. Just a random rock they found out in their yard. And we're still waiting to see the full picture of what this is going to be. They announced that they're closing down Bad Idea, and Odin's Eye, which is just finishing up, is going to be their last thing. I don't know if any of us actually thought that was going to be true, but we still haven't heard.
It's not going to be true.
It's not going to be true.
Nothing they said has been more than, half true.
Yeah. So, I mean, crazy stuff.
They're going to probably rebrand, but I have to say, so as a retailer, we were one of the 154 stores who carried Bad Idea stuff. We had to jump through a lot of hoops, and we had to continue. So to get on with them, we had to jump through hoops. We actually had to do over the internet phone interview and talk about our store, and it was neat. I liked the questions they asked. It had a lot to do with our feelings on comics, and they were trying to find are you the real deal? But I have to say, having jumped through all the hoops, if the comics weren't spectacular, I don't know if I would have been happy about the whole thing.
Yeah.
But luckily, that's what we're in it for, and the comics really were good. Not every one of them was A-list ultimately. Some of them were so experimental, they just kind of pinged off me in the wrong way. But most of them were awesome. And ENIAC was one of my favorite series of the year. A whole different form of sci-fi horror. I hope Bad Idea continues in some form. I hope they stop making us jump through so many hoops, though.
That's our little message we're sending out there.
Yeah.
And one I wanted to talk about, which we haven't talked on the show about, but we also sell manga here.
Yes.
It is a big seller. It's a little bit harder to solicit when we're doing our thing, because the way it comes out in volumes, it comes out at weird intervals and everything. But I wanted to say this was my favorite new series of the year, Chainsaw Man. We have many people on pull now to get every volume of it. If you're looking for something completely new, completely different, maybe you've never read a manga title, highly recommend Chainsaw Man. It is... what's funny is you read so many Western comics and everything, and when they come out with something that you're like, whoa, this is such a crazy idea, just pick up almost any manga book and you'll get an idea that's 10 times as crazy, and you realize, oh, we're still very much in a bubble of storytelling. But if you haven't read it, check out Chainsaw Man. It is so cool. There's many other great manga series that came out this year. And if you've never tried any, try picking one up. Just find a volume 1, look at the cover. If it looks interesting, read the back of it and try it out. And you might discover a whole new area of story and collecting you've never done before.
I'm behind on my manga. I read too many comics. I think the last manga I read was the manga Old Boy, which of course has been 2 movies now.
Yeah.
So I'm way behind, but I'm glad you're there to we got to get another person on the show.
Do we do anything other than read around here? I mean, I
watch a lot of movies.
Okay,
too.
yeah, a lot of movies. I when we're going over these lists, I'm like, man, I have read all of this.
I read the occasional book as well.
Yeah, I have. I'm always reading a slew of single issues. I always have a trade paperback or a manga in my backpack that I take with me everywhere. Yep. And then I've got a novel sitting by my bed that I'm reading. So I thanks schooling for...
I know. You think Star Wars alone would be enough to take up all your time.
Yeah, it does. But apparently there's more hours in the day for me.
All right. Well, thank you for everybody who hung in there for our year in review. We saw how little this week was going to be talking about ordering new comics, and we were like, we got an idea. We want to talk about the whole year. So I hope you enjoyed that as much as we did. I think it was a very strong year for comics. I've been reading them since I was a kid, but I've been reading, a lot more of them in the 7 years I've owned this store, and I think this year was fantastic overall. And I hope you do too. So thanks for tuning in. We will be back on Tuesday with our spoiler light review of the comics coming out that week. For those of you who are celebrating Christmas and the holidays, we hope you're having a great one. We hope you and your family are happy and healthy and safe. And keep reading comics. And if there are ones that you enjoyed, you want to talk about them in the reviews. Let's just keep things positive. We're a positive comic channel. I think a lot of people have noticed, and that's why we have such good people who watch our station. So thank you very much, and have a great rest of your day. I went to the wrong screen.
Why did you do that?